Hypothetical situation. You are married. After a few years of marriage, you and your partner decide that it's time to expand your family. After trying for a while, you finally welcome your new family member into the world. Everything seems fine. Then you have another addition to the family, and as that child is growing, you notice your firstborn seems to be behind developmentally when compared to their peers. Time passes, and you have another child. Your firstborn is old enough to see that they are having difficulties. You think that your child will grow out of it and become a productive member of society. Many years have passed. You are now entering your twilight years. Your firstborn is now an adult. They desperately need your help and guidance. What do? Do you keep them with you, or do you look for help to make sure that they are taken care of when you are no longer able to? In this case, you will watch as a family comes across this very issue and how it has disastrous results. On Final Thought, Unsolved Mysteries. The child you see before you is Gordon Page Jr., Gordie for short. In this picture, Gordie was 18 months old. Gordie was born autistic. However, he wasn't diagnosed till much later in his life. According to Gordon Sr. and his wife Linda Page, they thought something was wrong with their son, but they wasn't sure what it was. According to Gordon Sr., Gordie would do things that other children would also do, but he seemed to have difficulties doing those same actions. Gordon goes to remember when Gordie got older that he would just sit there and not move at all, not aware of what was going on around him. Linda Page recalls how they only thought Gordie was slow, but they loved him nonetheless. Most people would consider the term slow to be insensitive. However, Gordie's parents thought it was the best term, especially when it came to Gordie's unusual behavior, including his photographic memory when it came to his beloved baseball cards. Gordon fondly remembers how Gordie had a collection of baseball cards which was in the neighborhood of 30,000. Gordie would spend hours reciting the names of each player and their statistics. After a while, Gordie would tell you everything about that player if you said their name. Linda believes that Gordie didn't think anything was wrong. However, when he was getting older and his peers were starting to pass him by, he started to notice. When he started having trouble in the higher grades at school, and needed to be placed in a special education class, he started to get upset. After a lot of work, Gordie finally was able to graduate from high school. Gordie was ready for his first job. With help from his mother and father, they were able to help him get a job at a neighborhood grocery store. Gordon fondly remembers how Gordie came home one day very excited that he got his very first job. He reminisces that he took Gordie to work on his first day and how happy he felt as a father to see his son finally be happy. Sadly, Gordie's boss contacted his family and let them know that Gordie was having problems talking to the customers. Gordon tried to help coach Gordie in the ways of interacting with the customers. Daily they would go through drills about how to talk to the people. One example would be that Gordon, acting as a customer, would say thank you, and he would teach Gordie to try and say, "You're welcome." Sadly, Gordie tried hard with his father's coaching, but it wasn't enough. Gordie was sadly released from his job. Concerned about the well-being of their son, Gordon and Linda asked a social worker to evaluate Gordie. Gordie was labeled as a schizophrenic, and it was suggested that he should live in a group home. Gordon went to take Gordie to a group home. They were told that Gordie couldn't stay with him until he was stabilized. The doctors put him on a cocktail of various medicines. Sadly, Gordie didn't react well to the medication. Gordie was finally accepted into a group home that had an excellent reputation. With care and the right medication, Gordie started to improve. With Gordie improving at the group home, Gordon and Linda decided to relocate to Florida. Gordie stayed in Michigan. Everything was going great at the group home. However, a vehicle was left running proved to be too much of a temptation for Gordie, who was heavily medicated at the time. After losing control of the vehicle, Gordie crashed the truck into another vehicle that was being driven by a woman. When the police arrived, she gave them Gordie's description. When the police were looking for the person who was driving the truck, report came in that the person matching Gordie's profile was at a school wanting to teach a class. The police promptly picked Gordie up. Gordie was taken to a county hospital. A social worker named Bill Arnold talked to Gordie. Bill talks about how when he met Gordie, he was labeled as a schizophrenic, that normally people with that disorder, when given the right medicine, will start to clear up and get better. However, with Gordie, this didn't happen. After several months of therapy, Bill realized Gordie wasn't a schizophrenic, like he was originally diagnosed as, but rather he was autistic. Bill talks about how once they got Gordie off the pills he was on and gave him the proper care, he started to act normally. Gordon found a group home that specialized in helping autistic people. However, there was a caveat. Gordie couldn't see his parents for a month. The reason was so he could fully adjust to life at the group home. When Gordon went to leave, Gordie didn't want to stay behind. He rushed to the vehicle and tried to get in. Sadly, Gordon ended up leaving Gordie in the care of the caregivers. Gordon anguished over the decision to leave Gordie behind. He said that if he had another choice, he'd take Gordie home with him. However, he didn't think about what could have happened. He was only thinking about Gordie's well-being at the time. 4 days after Gordie was left at the home, he was reported as missing when a security officer was doing their nightly check of the residents at the home. A witness reported seeing someone who matched Gordie's appearance hitchhiking. He was heading towards Highway 96. Linda talks about how they are always thinking about Gordie, and no matter what, she hopes he finds his way home. Gordon regrets the fact that Gordie is lost, and that he wishes that Gordie would come home. If he could, he'd change everything just to have his son back. Whatever happened to Gordon Page Jr.? People have reported seeing him around the United States at different times. Sadly, nothing has ever panned out. Sadly, in January of 2018, Gordon Sr. died, never knowing his firstborn's fate. As of this video being produced, Gordie Page Jr. would be 55 years old. He would be approximately 6 feet 3 with blue eyes and reddish brown hair. Gordie Page Jr. is a Caucasian male with graying reddish brown hair and blue eyes. Page has a light tan birthmark on his lower left side of his ribcage, a scar under his chin, small white acne scars on his back, and a long brown mole on the inside of his upper leg. He has a scar on his pubic area from an operation to repair an undescended testicle during his childhood. He may have a mustache, beard, or goatee. His facial hair is red and only grows underneath his nose and on his chin. There are several white discolorations on his teeth, and he has a prominent Adam's apple. He mostly moves his eyes, not his head. When he is crossing the street, Page may stare and smile at others, which is his way of saying hello. Gordie might respond to the names of his two younger brothers, Lance and Todd. The final thought is just my opinion about what could have happened in the case you just watched. The final thought isn't meant to be taken as exact proof. It's sad whenever someone we love disappears. It damages the family. Even worse when we never find out what happened to those who are lost. With that said, I must give my final thought. Even though I hope Gordie is somewhere out there and is being taken care of, it is a strong possibility that he may also be deceased due to his inability to take care of himself. I believe that if Gordie is still alive, he's being taken care of at a state-run hospital. People may not even realize who he is. There is a strong chance that he may be listed as a John Doe. However, I must look at the other side of Gordie's fate. Odds are that he possibly got a ride when hitchhiking and was let off in a big city. He ended up getting lost and probably ended up mixing in with the homeless population of that city. Over time, Gordie, probably unable to fend for himself, took to the kindness of strangers. However, as seasons change and winter kicked in, odds are that Gordie could have succumbed to the elements and passed away. With no identification, the police listed him as a homeless transient and closed the case, never knowing who the person was that passed away. If you're a new viewer and you like what you saw, please leave a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and if you want to be alerted to when I release new videos, please click on the bell.